Hello and welcome to the Friday edition of the Post-Gazette Penguins podcast. I'm your host, King Jemison, flying solo today, and want to say I'm sorry that we missed Wednesday's episode. It's been a crazy week at the PG, and if you're watching this, you probably already heard the news that the Post-Gazette announced it will be shutting down in May. That news came across on Wednesday. Obviously shocking and sad. I'm just gutted for myself, for my colleagues, and really for the city of Pittsburgh for what this paper has meant in this region for so long. And I love the job and I love the people I work with. It's been an absolutely incredible opportunity for me, including covering the Penguins for much of this season. It's been so much fun. So I really can't imagine it coming to an end. And with that in mind, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I don't know, what the future holds, but certainly want to continue chasing this opportunity while I have it. And that includes continuing to bring this podcast to you here on YouTube and all the other podcast platforms out there. So on to a much happier topic. Unlike the PG, the Pittsburgh Penguins are having a fantastic week. They are the winners of 6 straight games since the holiday break, including a 4-1 win over New Jersey last night. That was on Thursday night. We're going to talk about that game and take a little bit of a wider look at the season thus far and just what they've been able to accomplish. But first, I want to let you know that this show is presented by FanDuel, where you can bet on all the NHL action, and that includes just 3 games tonight. One of those is Capitals at Blackhawks at 8 p.m. on NHL Network. The Caps are minus 150 favorites in that one. But one more line to mention at FanDuel. The Penguins' odds to make the playoffs at FanDuel have skyrocketed all the way to plus 100, even money. On Monday, they were over plus 200, and just a couple weeks ago, they were over plus 300. So Vegas is paying attention to what the Penguins are accomplishing on this 6-game winning streak, where it's not like they're getting lucky. They're outplaying team after team and have shown some really, really positive signs that have kind of taken us back to where this team was in the first month of the season. So I think that's notable that our partners at FanDuel have really started to move that line on the Penguins' odds to make the playoffs, and they would be in the field if it started today. So let's talk a little bit about the win over New Jersey. That's the only game that's happened since we last potted on Monday. The Penguins had lost to the Devils back in November in a game where they played really well, but just could not break through goalie Jake Allen and ended up losing in a shootout. In this game, they were able to break through pretty early on an absolute rocket from Erik Karlsson, an assist from his Swedish Olympic teammate, Rickard Rakell. Just a little preview of February in Milan, I would say. And on the other side of the ice, Stuart Skinner was unbelievable in the first period, because the Penguins really didn't play very well in the first 20 minutes. They were turning the puck over and putting their goalie in really tough spots, and he just kept on delivering time and time again. He had an amazing stop on a breakaway, several other chances where New Jersey had guys right in front of the net swinging away, and he was able to hold his own. And this was easily Skinner's best performance in a Penguins uniform, and the kind of goalie performance Pittsburgh was getting early in the season that just elevates everything that you do. And then the Penguins were able to kind of come alive in the second and third period and add to that lead. There was an incredible pass, stretch pass from Rickard Rakell to Connor Dewar, who was coming out of the penalty box. And Dewar has a sneaky good shot. I don't know how to say it any other way. The guy's up to 8 goals this season. I believe that's tied for 6 on the team. When he gets an opportunity, he often finds a way to put the puck in the back of the net, and he did on that breakaway. And both of Rakell's assists to give the Penguins their first 2 goals were unbelievable. This guy is really, really coming alive, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then Evgeni Malkin, I'm kind of burying the lead here. He returned after a 15-game absence with an upper body injury and had a power play goal on a 5-on-3 late in the second period to give the Penguins a nice 3-0 cushion going into the third. And I would say that Malkin, coming off this injury, was rusty for most of the game. He was moving around great. He was incredibly energetic. I felt like he spent the whole game on the ice, but he was turning the puck over and definitely did not seem to have the control that he usually does. that makes sense. It takes time. But on that goal, he looked like the guy that had 29 points in the first 26 games and has been pretty easily the Penguins' second best player, at least offensively, for this season. He talked about that injury earlier this week, and that was since we last podcasted. This was supposed to be a week-to-week thing. At least I was not expecting it to last until, January 8th for him to return. He last played on December 4th against Tampa Bay, a game where he had 2 goals and an assist. He said he felt fine after that game, but he woke up the next morning with serious shoulder pain. He said he basically couldn't move his shoulder, and it's just taken a while to get back. And you could see that he has definitely been keeping himself in shape, that there were no problem with his skating. I just think he needed to get comfortable handling the puck again. And sure enough, he puts one in the back of the net. Huge roar from the crowd, huge celebration from Gino. And listen, this Penguins forward lineup is pretty darn dangerous now. When you look at how they slotted Malkin in on the wing, with Ben Kindle playing center, with Igor Chinikov on the other wing for that second line. And that meant the second line of what had been the second line of Anthony Mantha, Tommy Novak, and Justin Brazeau just shifts down to the third line. Well, they might have been slightly underqualified as a second line. They are very overqualified as a third line. And so I just love the scoring balance of this Penguins team. Now, they give up a goal early in the third period on the power play, a rocket from Luke Hughes. But Skinner settled in right back after that. He made a couple nice saves in pretty much the immediate aftermath. And from there, New Jersey never really challenged. And Blake Lizotte gave the Penguins some breathing room late in the third period when he tapped in a beautiful pass from Noel Acciari for the second fourth-line tally of the game. So that was the win over New Jersey, the only game since Sunday for the Penguins. Extended their winning streak to 6 games. That's the second longest active streak in the NHL, and the team's longest since December 2022. So a lot of things are going right, and I want to zoom out a little bit and look at what this team has been able to accomplish. I wrote earlier this week about where they were projected. If you look in the hockey reference preseason over-under point totals, which I'm not certain of this, but I believe they kind of average out some of the different betting lines that are out there. The Penguins were projected to have 76.5 points this season for the entire season. Those were the third lowest odds in the entire league. And now you look up on January 9th, and the Penguins have the 10th most points in the league with 51. And if you go by point percentage, they're 10th there as well. And then they would be in that top wild card position for the Eastern Conference if the playoffs started today. They're just a point behind the Philadelphia Flyers for the third spot in the Metro. We know the standings are incredibly tight. And so, yes, if you go on a 6-game winning streak, you're going to rocket up them in the Eastern Conference. But this is still an incredible first half of the season for the Penguins. We cannot lose sight of where they were supposed to be and where they are now. And so I just want to quickly talk about some of the things that have led to this excellent start. But first, let's take a super duper quick break, and we'll be right back. So back here on the Post-Gazette Penguins podcast, I'm your host, King Jemison. In the first half of the show, we talked about really this Penguins 6-game winning streak and particularly the 6th game of that streak, their win over New Jersey on Thursday. Now let's zoom out a little bit and talk about the season thus far. So as I was saying, a team that was projected to have 76.5 points this season, at least according to the hockey reference totals, they're at 51 points through 42 games. They would be the top wild card if the playoffs started today. And I think there's a lot of things that you can point to that deserve credit for this pretty incredible start, but here's just a few. So first of all, in the early part of the season, both Malkin and Crosby were excellent. Obviously, Malkin missed a big chunk of time, and the Pens initially really struggled without him. But those two guys are still incredible drivers of offense. And then you add in some of the other veterans on this team, Brian Rust, Rickard Rakell, Erik Karlsson. These guys that, at times, and particularly I think in Karlsson's case, we've looked at as saying, are they able to actually continue helping the team? Well, I think he's answered that emphatically yes. These veterans have proven over and over again that they can be the drivers of your offense. And if you just look in the last 5 games, Sidney Crosby has 10 points in the last 5 games. He has an 8-game point streak that dates back to when he passed Mario Lemieux for the franchise record December 21st against Montreal. Erik Karlsson, quietly, 7 points in the last 5 games. He had that opening goal against New Jersey, had an assist later in the game as well. He has been really incredible at creating opportunities for his teammates, a team leading 29 assists this season, 33 points in 42 games. I don't know if it's the Olympics. I don't know if it's being in a better pairing with Parker Wotherspoon, but this guy looks like a different player than he has in previous seasons in Pittsburgh. And he's been a huge part of why they've gotten off to this start. And Rickard Rakell missed a hefty chunk of time with injury earlier this year. He's now really getting going. He has 5 points in the last 5 games. And I think you just see his craftiness as a passer. He knows how to find that guy backdoor. He knows how to throw that cross ice pass that sets up an opportunity from the circle. And he just meshes so well with Sidney Crosby, along with Brian Rust, of course, who has been quieter in the last couple of games, but that he just continues to put up point after point and be a major producer for this Penguins offense. And then, of course, Malkin, who I referenced as having 29 points in the first 26 games, he announces his presence with a goal in his return. And I think that when you put him back in the lineup, particularly on the power play, this team just becomes all that more dangerous. And I just love that Dan Muse kept what was the second line together and just dropped them down to the third line. If the line of Malkin, Kindle, and Chinakhov struggles, fine. You can mix things up again, maybe put Malkin back with Brazeau and Mantha. But for now, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And we know that line of Novak, Brazeau, and Mantha has been very productive. And if they're only asked to be a bottom 6 line, I think they can more than meet expectations there. Another thing we got to talk about is the team's goaltending. We know it was excellent early in the season between Artur Shilovs and Stuart Skinner, Artur Shilovs and Tristan Jarry. And then it had started to fall off even before the Tristan Jarry trade to the Oilers that brought in Stuart Skinner. And this team had the worst save percentage in the league for about a month from late November to late December. That has completely changed since the holiday break. We've seen Artur Shilovs really start to get going. His save percentages haven't been great, but he's winning games. He's making big saves when they need them, as he did throughout that Columbus game, particularly a few in the third period that allowed for Rickard Rakell's game-tying goal very late on Sunday. And then Stuart Skinner has been downright dominant in the past few games. He has now won 3 straight in a Penguins uniform, allowing just a single goal in each of those 3 starts. And again, in this New Jersey game, I can't stress enough that the Devils had chance after chance in the first period, oftentimes off of Penguins' mistakes. And he stood in there and saved each and every one of them. It was a really, really encouraging sign. And, I wrote this week about some of the things that have gone right in the first half of the season and whether they were sustainable or not. Most of them I said, yeah, this seems sustainable. The one that I said was not was the goaltending, because I was like, if you're counting on Artur Shilovs and Stuart Skinner with what we've seen from them in Shilov's career thus far for the young player, and then in Skinner's case over the past couple of seasons, I'm not sure that is a trustworthy combination. They're proving me wrong so far, and Skinner was truly excellent. Listen, Dan Muse talked about it after the game, how it is hard to come into a new situation as a goalie. Like, it's not the same team to team. I think that should be pretty obvious. And he did struggle mightily in his first few starts as a Penguin. He also had literally just uprooted his life, left the franchise he'd spent his entire career with to that point, and had taken to 2 straight Stanley Cup finals, another thing Dan Muse mentioned. And so we can absolutely understand why it would take a little bit of time for him to play up to what he knows he's capable of. He's doing that now. He is on a heater. I would say play him each and every game, except that the rotation has been what's worked best for the Penguins this season when they've allowed these guys that extra rest and just kind of bounce back and forth. So I would not expect to see that change anytime soon. And as long as both guys continue to rack up wins and saves, I don't think Dan Muse is going to change it either. So a few other things we could point to. I think the success of the fourth line has been absolutely massive in this winning streak and in this season. The team's record with Blake Lizotte in the lineup is excellent. The team's penalty kill with Blake Lizotte in the lineup is excellent. And Dan Muse noted this. They've been generating some offense recently too, despite the fact that they're not getting O-zone starts. He puts them in when there's a face-off in the defensive zone. And then sometimes if they get it to the offensive zone, he takes them out and puts in, the Crosby line or the Malkin line or some other more offensively talented line. And yet they continue to get goals. 2 goals for the fourth line last night, and Connor Dewar and Blake Lizotte. And those guys just play so hard. They make life so difficult for their opponents, and it is showing up in a big way. They played, I believe, heavy minutes in that third period. I didn't look at exactly how many, but it felt like they were out there the entire final 20 minutes because that's who Muse trusts to make smart plays, to make life difficult on a team trying to come back. And they were able to do that and not only prevent the comeback, but add to the lead as well. So there's plenty more we could talk about in this season, but those are just a sampling. I encourage you to go check out the article that was published on Wednesday about the first half of the season. I have an article up today about Michael Therrien's epic rant that was somehow 20 years ago, where he called the defenseman soft and the performance pathetic, and in many ways set the tone for a new era of Penguins hockey. It was cool to get Crosby's thoughts on that, to get Colby Armstrong's thoughts on that, talk to Therrien himself, and also Tom McMillan, who was the vice president of communications at the time and has more institutional knowledge of the Penguins than about anybody alive. And so they all had great things to say about that moment and what it meant for the franchise moving forward. So I encourage you to check that out on postgazette.com. So that's going to do it for the Friday edition of the Post-Gazette Penguins podcast. We'll be back on Monday to recap a busy weekend for the Pens. They're going to play Calgary at home, 3:30 p.m. Saturday. And I really can't imagine a better way to spend a Saturday afternoon in January than watching this hockey team right now. So I encourage you to head to PPG Paints Arena if you're able. And then the Penguins will make a lightning fast road trip over to Boston at 5 p.m. on Sunday. And they'll be back at home next Tuesday against Tampa Bay. So please like and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening to this. We really appreciate your support and need it now more than ever. And I know this is a big ask given this week's news, but please subscribe at post-gazette.com. We're still going to be putting out work. We're still going to be putting out great content and working as hard as we can, whether it be sports, news, and everything else. And yeah, truly, your support now can go longer than perhaps ever before. So until then, thank you so much for watching and have a great weekend, Pittsburgh.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.